Hey everyone, it's Jenna. For the longest time I believed family was this unbreakable bond, a safe harbor, the people who were supposed to catch you. But then, the very people I'd have walked through fire for, well, they basically handed me the matches and a map to the inferno. What happened after that? It wasn't just about getting even, it was about finding myself in the ashes. A waiter, his smile starched and professional, glided towards me. "Are you the bride's sister?" he inquired, his voice smooth. "I've been asked to show you to your seat." He led me, not to a table with flowers and laughter, but to a single solitary chair tucked right beside the restroom entrance. Alone. The tears I'd been wrestling with for hours surged again, a hot, painful pressure behind my eyelids. I blinked once, then twice, a desperate attempt to keep them caged. But the third blink, my control just shattered. Without a single word, I spun on my heel and stumbled into the restroom, the sound of the party already fading behind that closing door. I remember. Oh God, I remember. How I'd driven 10 grueling hours through a full-blown blizzard, just to surprise my sister Brooke at her engagement party. In the passenger seat, swaddled like a newborn, was a custom-made cake, carefully, lovingly boxed. But they didn't want me there. After everything, every sacrifice, every piece of myself I'd given. What do you do when your own family betrays you that deeply? Let me tell you what happened. I'd just come off a brutal night shift the day before. The moment I clocked out, I was on the road, pushing myself to be there for Brooke's big moment. My car was cramped, barely any room for me, with that enormous white bakery box sitting on the passenger seat like a queen on her throne. Brooke had mentioned just once years ago that she dreamed of having a raspberry champagne cake for her special day. So, I'd scrimped and saved for 3 months, 3 whole months of my caregiver's salary, just to order it for her. Through exhaustion so thick it felt like wading through mud, through sheets of ice that made the highway a death trap, through roads so white-knuckled, tense with danger they practically vibrated with fear. I gripped that steering wheel until my fingers ached and my knuckles were bone white. All I wanted, the only thing I could picture, was her face lighting up when she saw I'd made it, that I'd brought her dream cake. I couldn't wait for that. I only stopped once, for gas and a lukewarm coffee that tasted like despair. In the grimy, flickering light of a gas station restroom, I changed into the only decent dress I owned, my coat still damp and heavy on my shoulders from the relentless snow. When I finally pulled up to the venue, this opulent historic hotel in the city's ritziest district, my old sedan practically groaned as it crunched over the freshly fallen snow in the circular driveway. The place looked like something ripped from the pages of a glossy bridal magazine. Fairy lights were twisted around grand, soaring pillars, and the faint sound of a string quartet drifted through the frosty air, hushed and elegant. My heart actually swelled. A little. This night, I thought, this night will be unforgettable. And boy was I right. Just not in the way I'd hoped. I handed my keys to the valet, a young guy with an impeccably blank expression. He glanced at my beat-up car, then back at me, a tiny, almost imperceptible flicker in his eyes. "Are you with the catering staff?" he asked, his tone polite but telling. Shame, hot and sharp, burned in my chest, but I forced a smile that felt brittle. "No, I'm family." Even that little moment, being judged by the rust on my car door, left a small stinging bruise. But oh, that was just the overture. Then I saw her. Brooke. She was wearing a blush pink silk gown that probably cost more than my car, her hair sculpted into a flawless, intricate updo. She was laughing, a tinkling practice sound, with one of Liam's groomsmen. But the second her eyes landed on mine, that dazzling smile just vanished. "Wiped clean. You actually came?" she asked, and her voice wasn't warm, it wasn't welcoming. It was flat. 10 hours in a blizzard? I said, trying to inject some cheer I definitely wasn't feeling, a knot tightening in my stomach. Surprise. She didn't even glance at the cake I was still awkwardly holding. "I really didn't expect you to make it in this weather." I carefully placed the cake on a side table, already groaning under the weight of other elegant pastries and towering floral arrangements. "But I said softly. "It's your wedding. Engagement party. There's no way I'd miss it." Brooke just blinked, her perfectly mascaraed lashes fluttering. Behind her, her friend Tiffany, a woman whose smile always seemed to have a serrated edge, leaned in and said, loud enough for me and everyone nearby to hear, "She wasn't actually on the guest list, was she, Brooke?" I fought to keep my face a blank mask, to not let the sting show. That's when I noticed Brooke didn't look surprised by Tiffany's comment. She looked irritated, bothered. "I need to go check on something," she muttered, her eyes flicking away from mine. And then she just melted back into the glittering crowd, leaving me standing there. I felt frozen, an inconvenient piece of furniture guests had to navigate around. I spotted my mother, Brenda, standing near a massive ornate fireplace, draped in pearls and what looked like designer silk. She glided over, offered a cold, papery touch of her cheek to mine, then whispered, her lips barely moving, her smile tight and strained, "Don't draw attention to yourself, Jenna, okay? Tonight is Brooke's moment." My own smile felt like it might crack right off my face like cheap glass. Of course I managed. Her eyes, sharp and critical, dropped to the slightly damp hem of my dress, and a little crease of disapproval etched itself between her perfectly sculpted eyebrows. Liam, the groom tobe, looking impossibly dapper in his tailored suit, walked past. I offered a small smile to the man who was supposed to become my brother-in-law. He gave me the briefest, most cursory nod, a barely there acknowledgement before he was swept away. I walked deeper into the grand ballroom, each step feeling heavier than the last, dragging my heart down with it. Along the walls in ornate gilded frames were professionally shot engagement photos. Brooke and Liam laughing on a sailboat, Brooke and Liam strolling through a park in autumn, Brooke and Liam clinking champagne glasses. My face wasn't in a single one. Not one. Near a cascading champagne fountain that sparkled under the chandeliers, I overheard snippets of conversation, sharp little darts. "She's always so dramatic, isn't she? Well, every successful family has one, a disappointment. Maybe she thinks wearing scrubs to her nursing job every day entitles her to some kind of spotlight here." Their laughter, light and cruel, cut through me like a scalpel. I found the coat check, desperate to shed my damp, heavy outerwear. On a silver tray next to the counter were gift boxes, exquisitely wrapped in cream and gold, labeled bridal party. 10 identical, perfect boxes, each with a little personalized card. I scanned them. Twice. My name wasn't there. Just wasn't. A sharp, almost physical pain tightened in my chest, making it hard to breathe. I sank onto a plush velvet bench tucked into an alcove, the opulent fabric feeling cold against my skin. My phone buzzed in my purse. A group message. The bridal party babes thread. Or something equally nauseating. And then I saw it. "She doesn't fit our aesthetic. Tell her all positions are filled." It was from Brooke's number. My throat closed up. A fire, fierce and unexpected, burned behind my eyes. I stumbled back out of the coat check area, nearly tripping, and pushed through a side door into the frigid night air, gulping it down as if the icy shock could numb the searing pain that was spreading through my chest like a poison. This wasn't some careless oversight. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was deliberate, calculated. Exclusion spelled out in perfectly chosen, cutting words. My fingers trembled, not from the biting cold, but from those words seared into my mind. Brooke's words. I stared at the glowing screen of my phone, wishing, praying I could unsee it. I didn't reply. What could I possibly say? I just deleted the message, swiped it into oblivion. But the wound, oh, that wound had already carved itself deep into my heart. Even after the screen went dark, those cruel, dismissive words echoed in my head, a relentless mantra of pain. I gathered myself, or what was left of me. I drew in a deep, aching breath, the kind that scrapes your lungs, and stepped back into the glittering, hostile banquet hall. I moved slowly, a ghost at their feast, trying to figure out how to simply exist in a space that had made it abundantly, painfully clear it didn't want me. The music swelled, a lively, upbeat tune, the bass vibrating through the polished marble floor beneath my worn-out heels. A perfectly curated celebration playlist, designed for joy I couldn't touch. Cheerful, amplified voices rang out from the center of the room, where Brooke and her entourage, including Tiffany, were gathered around a towering pyramid of crystal champagne glasses. Her back was to me. Under the dazzling, impossibly bright chandelier, I could see her perfectly practiced smile shining, beaming. It would never, ever be directed at me. Not genuinely, anyway. Elegant, round tables filled the vast room, each one a picture of perfection, adorned with silk runners, flickering tapered candles, and delicate, handwritten place cards. I checked every single table. Twice. Slowly. Methodically. My name was nowhere. Not misspelled, not tucked away at a less desirable spot. Just gone. Erased. As if I didn't exist. And then once again that waiter, the one with the perpetually professional smile, materialized at my elbow. "Are you the bride's sister?" He asked again, that same smooth, impersonal tone. "I've been asked to escort you." He didn't lead me to a table. He led me to that tiny, isolated chair, shoved unceremoniously beside the entrance to the restrooms. Alone. On the small, wobbly side table next to my chair sat a single paper cup filled with lukewarm water. From my desolate little corner, I watched the slideshow being projected onto the far wall. Photos from Brooke's childhood cycled through. Her kindergarten graduation, her beaming face framed by a tiny cap and gown. Her high school prom, a vision in satin and corsage. Family vacations to sun-drenched beaches and snow-capped mountains. Not a single image included my face. It was like I'd been meticulously, systematically edited out of her entire life story. The waiter brushed past me again, his arm grazing mine as he hurried by, not even a flicker of apology in his eyes. The water in the glass he was carrying sloshed, and a few cold drops splashed onto my dress. I instinctively shifted closer to the wall, pressing myself against the cool, unyielding plaster. Honestly, even the cold, impersonal stone felt more welcoming than the people in that room who shared my blood. The tears I'd been battling, the ones I thought I'd finally managed to suppress, surged once more, hot and stinging behind my eyes. I blinked once, then twice, desperately trying to hold them back. But on the third blink I lost. All control, all composure just gone. Without uttering a sound, without a single word, I turned and fled into the restroom, just a single merciful step away. Inside one of the cold, sterile stalls, I sank down against the tiled wall, the chill seeping through my thin dress. I locked the flimsy door and clutched my still damp coat in my fists, knuckles white. The tears came then, not in a flood but slowly, agonizingly. They left fiery, wet trails down my already chilled cheeks. I didn't make a sound, not even a whisper, not a sob. Just quiet, desolate tears, the kind I'd cried for years, the kind no one ever seemed to notice. I don't know how long I sat there, huddled on the cold floor, the distant thumping of the party music a cruel counterpoint to my silent grief. Eventually the tears subsided, leaving me hollowed out and raw. I wiped my face with the sleeve of my dress, the fabric rough against my skin. I inhaled a shaky breath, the kind you take when you're trying to steady yourself, to find some core of strength you're not even sure exists anymore. The kind of breath you take before you walk into a battle you know you're outnumbered in, but you refuse, utterly refuse, to surrender. As I stepped out of the dim quiet of the restroom and tried to make my way back to my lonely, humiliating seat, the usual buzz and hum of the venue, the clinking glasses and bursts of laughter, suddenly seemed to dim. It was replaced by the sound of scattered voices, louder now, overpowering the carefully curated background music. For a fleeting moment I thought someone was about to make a speech, perhaps a toast. But no, it was just conversation. Brooke and Liam were still up near the makeshift stage area, but it sounded like someone had accidentally left a microphone on. No one seemed to have noticed yet. The party, for the most part, continued as if nothing was amiss. Just as I reached my little chair by the restroom, a voice, amplified and startlingly clear, hit my ears. A voice I knew better than my own. My sister's voice. Brooke. It wasn't whispered. It was loud. Spoken directly into that live center-stage microphone, now broadcasting her every word to the entire room. She was standing in the middle of the floor. A champagne flute held high, a regal, confident posture. Tiffany was right beside her, a smug grin plastered on her face. And then I heard my name. "I just can't believe Jenna actually showed up," Brooke announced, her voice dripping with disdain. "She's honestly ruined everything. Public humiliation. It has a sting, a particular kind of burn that never really fades." I froze. I literally couldn't move. Every single head in that ballroom, or so it felt, turned to look at me, sitting there by the bathroom door. Now I could see Brooke clearly, her perfect, expensive curls bouncing with every theatrical, dismissive gesture. Tiffany stood beside her, that grin widening, practically vibrating with malicious glee. "I can't believe she actually came," Tiffany echoed, her voice ringing out across the now hushed room, loud and deliberate. Brooke let out a high-pitched, artificial laugh, and her eyes, cold and sharp, locked onto mine. 10 hours in a snowstorm, can you imagine? For what? To sit by the restroom door? Scattered, uncomfortable laughter sliced through the silence like shards of shattered glass. Cruel. Deliberate. "She's always so desperate to be included," Brooke continued, her voice gaining momentum, reveling in the spotlight. "God, if only she'd gotten into an accident on the way here, this all would have been so much easier." She giggled again, a sound that made my stomach turn, and lifted her glass even higher, as if toasting her own cruelty. Just imagine how much sympathy I would have received. And finally, a little peace and quiet. Her words landed like grenades, exploding across the room, shattering the festive atmosphere. The laughter that followed this time wasn't just mean. It felt rehearsed, a performance of cruelty for an audience she was trying to impress. The mood in the room began to shift, to curdle. I could see some guests looking visibly uncomfortable, their smiles faltering, their eyes darting nervously between Brooke and me. Liam's face, I noticed, had gone chalky white. I stood there, rooted to the spot, frozen. Under the crushing, unbearable weight of 100 pairs of eyes, my body simply refused to move. The cake, the beautiful raspberry champagne cake I had driven through a blizzard for, tied with a gold ribbon I'd carefully, lovingly chosen during a precious break on a long night shift, sat on that side table untouched, unseen. A stunning three-tiered masterpiece, adorned with delicate crystallized flowers and a tiny banner that read, "To love, to family, to forever." Still perfect. Still completely ignored. I felt the weight of years, a lifetime of rejection, of being made to feel small, pressing down on my chest, making it hard to breathe. Flashes of memories, sharp and painful, lit up in my mind. Forgotten birthdays, achievements casually dismissed, sacrifices made without a word of thanks, unnoticed, unvalued. I wanted to disappear. To run. To sink through the polished marble floor and never be seen again. But then a new voice, clear and steady, cut through the suffocating silence. "Excuse me." A distinguished older woman with elegant silver hair and an air of quiet authority stepped forward from the edge of the crowd. It was Mrs. Eleanor Vance, Liam's mother. I recognized her vaguely, though I couldn't quite place where we might have met before. Mrs. Vance didn't look at me. She stared directly at Brooke, her expression cold, appraising, and utterly deliberate. "Did you just say," she asked, her voice resonating with a calm power that filled the now silent room, "that you wished your own sister had gotten into a car accident?" Brooke's triumphant smile faltered, wobbled, then collapsed. It was just a joke, Eleanor," she stammered, her voice suddenly small and uncertain. "You know, just sisters teasing each other. A little dark humor." Mrs. Vance then turned to me. Her eyes, when they met mine, softened with a flicker of recognition, then dawning comprehension. "Jenna," she said, her voice gentle now. "Jenna. From Sunset Gardens Care Facility?" I could only manage a faint nod, confusion swirling with the shame that was still burning inside me. "How did she?" "This young woman," Eleanor said, her voice ringing out clear and strong, gesturing towards me. "This young woman took care of me 3 years ago, when I was fighting for my life." The room held its breath. You could have heard a pin drop. "After my surgery," Eleanor continued, her gaze unwavering, her composure absolute, "she looked after me for 3 long months. She stayed long after her shifts were officially over, unpaid, just to be there. No one else could comfort me through the pain and the fear but Jenna. Jenna sat with me for hours. When I couldn't sleep, she would read to me, her voice calm and soothing. When I felt so weak I thought I might not recover, her quiet kindness, her unwavering compassion, gave me the strength to keep fighting." Liam turned, his head snapping towards his mother, then towards me. His eyes, which had been clouded with confusion and dawning horror, now lit with a sudden sharp recognition. I opened my mouth, though no sound came out at first. My threadbare dress, the one I'd changed into at that grimy gas station, suddenly felt impossibly shabby in this room of designer gowns and bespoke suits. May I say something?" I finally managed, my voice surprisingly steady. Brooke's face, just moments before flushed with cruel triumph, turned a ghostly, sickly pale. The room went silent, the kind of profound, echoing silence you find in a hospital corridor late at night. "I drove 10 hours," I began, my voice gaining a little strength, a little clarity through a blizzard. "Right after finishing an overnight shift at the hospital." I could feel every eye in the room on me, but for the first time it didn't feel crushing. Felt focusing. "I brought a cake that cost me nearly half my monthly rent. And while you were up here, publicly wishing I died in an accident on the way, that cake still sits over there, completely untouched." I pointed towards the elegant box on the side table as I spoke. A wave of audible gasps, sharp intakes of breath, rippled through the room. Tiffany, Brooke's loyal sidekick, actually choked on her mimosa, sputtering. My mother's face, I saw out of the corner of my eye, had gone a dreadful mottled shade of pale. Eleanor Vance turned back towards Brooke, and her voice, when she spoke again, was like ice. Hard. Unyielding. "You mean to tell me," she said, each word precise and cutting, "that even after your sister drove through a storm, brought you a custom cake, you still wished out loud that she'd gotten into a fatal car accident? Is this how you treat a sister who goes to such extraordinary lengths for your sake?" Her voice, usually so composed, cracked with a raw, undeniable emotion. "I'm sorry," she said, her gaze sweeping briefly over the shocked faces in the room, then settling back on Brooke like a physical weight. "But we simply cannot, and will not welcome someone who treats her own flesh and blood this way into our family." Brooke stammered, her eyes wide with panic. I didn't mean." "Liam," Eleanor interrupted, her voice firm, not taking her eyes off my sister, "I believe we need to have a very serious conversation about this marriage. Right now." Liam, who had been standing beside Brooke looking like he'd been poleaxed, gave a single decisive nod, his jaw clenched tight, his eyes filled with a mixture of fury and dawning disgust. "I think you're absolutely right, Mom." Brooke's perfectly curated, glittering world was visibly, audibly crumbling around her. The atmosphere in the room had shifted completely. The silence that followed wasn't awkward or uncomfortable anymore. It was conclusive, definitive, felt cleansing, like a release. Her cruel, careless words still echoed faintly in the corners of my mind, but they already felt distant, less potent. Like the final blustering gust of wind before a storm at long last gives way to a profound, exhausted calm. That night I hardly slept. But it wasn't because of anxiety or lingering pain. It was because something deep inside me, something that had been twisted and knotted for years, had finally blessedly settled into place. The immense weight I had been carrying for as long as I could remember, the weight of their expectations, their dismissals, their casual cruelty, it had been lifted. A few weeks later, on a bright spring morning, with the last of the snow finally melted and the first crocuses tentatively pushing through the damp earth, there came a soft knock at my apartment door. When I opened it, to my utter surprise, it was Eleanor Vance, Liam's mother. She stood on my small porch, elegant in a refined spring coat, her calm, kind smile unwavering as I just stood there, frozen in surprise. "May I come in, Jenna?" she asked gently. I welcomed her into my small, slightly cluttered apartment. On the tiny kitchen table sat a cheerful bouquet of grocery store daisies I'd picked up after finishing my shift the night before. "Liam and Brooke's wedding," she said quietly, her gaze soft as she sat down, "has been officially called off." She paused, then added, "I wanted to tell you myself." I wasn't shocked. Deep down, I think I'd expected it. I had imagined I might feel some cold, bitter satisfaction at this news, but instead I only felt a quiet, almost serene sense of peace. A profound, freeing peace. She returned the engagement ring, Eleanor continued, her voice low and steady. Liam realized he couldn't share his life with someone like her. The way she treated you, Jenna, it revealed her true character. Irrevocably. Outside my small window, a gentle spring rain had begun to fall, washing the city streets clean. It felt symbolic, like a quiet, cleansing renewal. A few days after Eleanor's visit, I received a long, rambling email from my mother, Brenda. It was mostly filled with blame, with thinly veiled fury at me for causing a scene and embarrassing the family. But hidden within the torrent of accusations was a brief, almost grudging mention of Brooke. "She cries every day," Mom wrote. "Her friends, even Tiffany, have turned their backs on her. Tiffany won't even answer her calls anymore. She's losing followers on social media by the thousands. You've ruined her life, Jenna." I didn't respond. What was the point? They still refused to see the truth, to acknowledge their own roles in the whole miserable affair. In their eyes, I was still the problem, the difficult one, and Brooke somehow was still the victim. About a week later, I came home from a long, tiring shift at the hospital to find Brooke herself sitting on the worn steps outside my apartment building. She wasn't wearing her usual designer labels or flawless makeup. Just a pair of plain blue jeans, a shapeless hoodie, and her hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. Her eyes were red-rimmed and puffy. Can I talk to you, Jenna?" she asked, her voice quiet, shaky, almost unrecognizable. I let her in, though the tension in the small space was immediate and thick. As she stepped into my tiny living room, she didn't try to dominate the space, to fill it with her presence the way she once would have. She seemed to shrink, to fold in on herself, avoiding eye contact, her shoulders slumped. This version of her, wounded, vulnerable, stripped of all her usual glitter and arrogance, felt like a stranger. "Have a seat," I said, my voice neutral. I didn't bother to soften my tone, to offer comfort I didn't feel. I had decided, somewhere in the quiet aftermath of that disastrous party, that I was done performing. Done trying to be the person they wanted me to be. She sat hesitantly at my small kitchen table, her fingers tracing the worn grain of the wood. "I've lost everything," she whispered, her voice cracking. "Not just Liam. My friends, my job, my followers. The video from the party, it leaked." "Things," I said. "You mean the part where you wished I died in a car accident?" I asked, my voice calm even. She closed her eyes, a pained expression flickering across her face, and nodded, a tear escaping and tracing a path down her cheek. "Everyone's abandoned me," she choked out. Tiffany just told me I brought this all on myself. She said I've been permanently blacklisted from the elite circle. No one wants to be associated with me anymore." "Do you know what Eleanor Vance did?" I asked, keeping my tone level. "She contacted every single one of the wealthy, influential clients I've ever cared for over the years. She told them exactly what you said at that party, exactly how you behaved." Brooke's face, already pale, drained of any remaining color. You're your brand now, I said, the words tasting a little bitter even to me. Is the woman who publicly wished her caregiver sister dead after years of mistreatment. That's your new aesthetic. If this had been the old me, the Jenna I used to be, I would have rushed to comfort her. I would have told her it would all be okay somehow. I would have slipped right back into that familiar, suffocating role of the sister who sacrificed her own feelings, her own well-being for the sake of family. But I didn't feel that need anymore. That part of me was gone. Why did you say those things, Brooke? I asked the question genuine, born of a weary curiosity. Did you really wish I'd died? No, she cried, fresh tears streaming down her face now, her composure completely gone. No, I thought everyone would laugh. That's all. I wanted to impress them, Tiffany and the others. I didn't even really think about you. That's the point, Brooke, I said, my voice still quiet but firm. You've never thought about me. Not during that 10-hour drive through a blizzard. Not when I spent months saving for that custom cake you never even looked at. Not for any of the 1,000 little sacrifices I've made for you, for Mom, over the years. To you I was just a prop. Something to be pulled out when convenient, and otherwise ignored or dismissed. Her shoulders shook as she sobbed, raw, broken sounds. In being held responsible for all the cancellation fees from the wedding venue, the caterers, everything, she gasped out between sobs. There's no way I can pay them all. I asked Mom for help, but her credit cards are all maxed out. She blames me for everything every single day. She looked up at me then, her eyes wide and desperate. I need help, Jenna. Please. What can I do? How can I be forgiven? Do you want forgiveness from me, Brooke? I asked, the question hanging heavy in the air between us. Or do you just want forgiveness from the world, from your social media followers, from the people you think matter? The question silenced her. A long, uncomfortable pause stretched out, filled only with the sound of her ragged breathing. What should I do? She finally begged, her voice barely a whisper. How do I fix this? You don't fix this, I said, not unkindly but not softly either. But you can learn from it. You can grow. You can choose to be a different person going forward. She nodded, still weeping, her face blotchy and swollen. Can I stay the night here? Just for tonight? I can't afford a hotel anymore, and Mom... I looked into her eyes, her tear-filled, pleading eyes. I saw real regret there, I thought, and real fear. But I also knew, with a clarity that was both painful and liberating, that I was no longer responsible for her emotions, for her comfort, for fixing her mistakes. No, Brooke, I said gently but firmly. You can't stay here. You need to go home. You need to face Mom. The two of you created this mess together with how you've treated me for years, and you need to take responsibility for it together. But Jenna, please. That's enough, Brooke, I said, rising to my feet, a sense of finality settling over me. I have to get ready for work. My night shift starts soon. The flicker of pain, of fresh rejection, that crossed her face would have once broken me, would have sent me rushing to apologize, to backtrack. But not anymore. And tell Mom this, I added, pausing at my bedroom door. I'm no longer going to be used at her convenience or yours. Those days are over. In the days and weeks that followed, Brooke's scandal, as the internet gleefully dubbed it, spread like wildfire across social media. Her carefully curated image, her brand of effortless perfection, crumbled into dust. Former friends and influencers began frantically deleting photos of her from their accounts, distancing themselves as quickly as possible. Months later, I spotted her by chance at a local discount supermarket. She was standing behind a cash register, wearing the store's drab uniform, a name tag that read Brooke W. pinned crookedly to her chest. Her hair was pulled back in a simple, unadorned ponytail. The dazzling shine, the entitled confidence she once carried like a shield, was completely gone. Our eyes met for a brief, startling moment. She looked away instantly, a flush of what looked like genuine shame coloring her cheeks. I'd heard through the grapevine, the very sparse grapevine I still had connected to my family, that she had moved out of Mom's house and into a tiny, run-down apartment on the other side of town. She was working full-time at the supermarket and taking night classes at a community college, hoping to earn some kind of degree in marketing. All of her once glamorous social media accounts had been deleted. One evening, sitting in my new apartment, larger, brighter, with a lovely view of a small city parked through wide, clean windows, I wrote in my journal. It took me 32 years, I wrote, to finally understand that validation, true validation, comes not from others but from within. I spent so long, so many years, practically begging for someone else to see my worth because I hadn't yet learned to see it, to own it for myself. From time to time, I still receive short, hesitant messages from Brooke. They're not real apologies, not yet. More like vague, tentative hopes for some kind of deeper connection, a reaching out from the wreckage of her former life. But I no longer need them. I no longer crave them. Meanwhile, my mother's world, her carefully constructed social standing, was also starting to crack and unravel. The video from the engagement party, the one where Brooke wished me dead and Mom stood by silently, had gone viral in her circles too. Her carefully cultivated reputation in her various ladies' clubs and charity committees began to fray. A few weeks ago, I received her first actual apology, if you could even call it that. It wasn't sincere. It was soaked in resentment, bitter and sharp, clearly born from her own fall from social grace. "Why would you do this to me, Jenna?" she wrote, the words practically dripping with self-pity. "My friends are ignoring me. My club memberships are at risk. What did I ever do to deserve this from you?" My reply was simple, just 2 sentences. "Mom, it's what you didn't do that was the problem." For years, her social isolation continued. She was no longer invited to the seasonal tea parties and fundraising galas she used to meticulously plan and host. Donations to her pet charity efforts had plummeted. Eventually, she announced her retirement from public life, citing vague health reasons, and moved into a modest, much smaller home in a quiet, unassuming suburb. Our relationship remained broken, fractured, but somehow it no longer pained me the way it once had. She still reaches out occasionally with superficial texts or brief, awkward phone calls, but she still doesn't fully, truly acknowledge her behavior, her complicity. But I no longer require that of her. I no longer need her validation to feel whole. I now stand confidently, peacefully in the life I've chosen, the life I've built for myself. I know my worth, and more importantly, I finally learned how to protect it, to cherish it. No longer am I the woman who drives 10 hours through a dangerous snowstorm and sacrifices everything she has, just to be dismissed and humiliated. Now I am a woman who sets boundaries, firm but fair. A woman who honors her own value, her own needs. Mrs. Vance Eleanor visits sometimes. We sit in my sunny living room, or on her beautiful patio, over cups of herbal tea and share quiet, peaceful conversations. Recently, she told me, her eyes kind, by standing your ground that night, Jenna, by speaking your truth, you gave Brooke the greatest, and perhaps the hardest gift she'll ever receive. She's finally learning to face the consequences of her actions. She's being forced to grow. I never needed my family's approval, their applause, to know I was worthy. It was always there all along. Every time I held a patient's trembling hand. Every time I managed to ease someone's pain, even just a little. And ultimately, it was there when I chose finally to care for myself with that same compassion. Now, when I look in the mirror, I see the strength I once missed, the resilience I never gave myself credit for. It was always there, like a tiny seed buried deep beneath a heavy blanket of snow, unseen, dormant, but very, very much alive, just waiting patiently for the right moment, the right conditions to finally break through and grow. One sun-drenched Saturday morning, I walked to a small artisan bakery a few blocks from my new apartment. I took my time breathing in the crisp, clean spring air that filled my lungs, feeling the warmth of the sun on my face. I ordered a small cake just for me. Nothing fancy, nothing elaborate. A simple vanilla cake with fluffy white frosting and a sprinkle of fresh berries. No dedication, no special occasion. Just because. Back at my apartment, I lit a single slender candle, cut a generous slice, and sat by my open window, the gentle breeze ruffling the curtains. I didn't make a wish. I didn't need to. I simply savored each bite, each sweet, uncomplicated mouthful, fully present in the moment in my life. Outside, the very last stubborn patches of old snow were finally melting away, revealing the fresh, vibrant green shoots of new grass pushing up from the earth underneath. Not all new beginnings come with fireworks and grand pronouncements. Some just need quiet courage, a steady heart, and the willingness to choose yourself. And this beginning, this one is truly wonderfully mine. Thank you for listening to my story. It's still a journey, you know? If any part of this resonated with you, or if you've walked a similar path, I'd be so grateful to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Your words, your shared experiences, they mean more than you know. And if you feel moved to support the channel, things like super thanks truly do help us continue to bring these stories to light. It's a small way to be part of a larger healing conversation. And of course, please consider subscribing for more stories of resilience and finding your way back to yourself. Take care.